some FLDs in the chart. So let me plot an FLD, and in fact that's the FLD I want. It is the FLD of the 40-week cycle, and as you can see there, I've selected the 40-week cycle, and there's the FLD. Now, of course, FLDs are used to confirm troughs and peaks in cycles, and in a perfect world, price when it crosses above an FLD confirms that a trough is a trough of the 40-week cycle, and when it drops below the FLD, it confirms that a previous peak was the peak of the 40-week cycle. So I'd like to point out something over here. This phasing analysis has positioned a trough of the 40-week cycle over here in January of 2011. But you notice something, that is that price has not come below the FLD at that point. Now, usually, of course, price of a 40-week cycle should be below the FLD. As you can see here, if this is a trough of the 40-week cycle, price is below the FLD. Here's the FLD up here, and here's price down here. And over here, of course, this is also a trough of the 40-week cycle, and so here price is below the FLD, which is over here. Now here, and perhaps I should zoom in on that section. There we go. Here, as you can see, the price did not come down below the FLD at the point that we have labeled the 40-week trough. Now, as opposed to Elliott wave theory, which has some absolute hard and fast rules, such as wave 2 cannot exceed the start of wave 1. There aren't any hard and fast rules in Hurst cyclic analysis. So it is not an absolute hard rule that price has to come below that FLD. Hurst cyclic theory acknowledges that markets, financial markets, are not perfect. They're not ideal. They don't move in an absolutely ideal fashion. So it is perfectly okay. I wouldn't say it's perfectly okay, but it is okay to label this as a trough of the 40-week cycle. However, it does cause one to question the analysis, and it does cause one to say, hang on, maybe this is not the perfect analysis. And I'd like to point something else out about this, and that is that over here, price did come below the 40-week FLD, and it formed a trough over there. Now, something else that people find surprising about Hurst cyclic theory is that it is not always the most obvious trough that proves to be the correct trough. This here is the most obvious trough. 10th of January 2011 was the most obvious trough, but often with the benefit of hindsight, it turns out to be a less prominent trough that turns out to be the correct one. So it is possible that this trough here is a trough of the, or is in fact the trough of the 40-week cycle. So how do we do that? What happens is we get Sentient Trader to perform an analysis, and we use what's called an expert model. I've spoken about that in other trader chats, and we're not going to have time to talk about it today. But I've used an expert model, which is really easy to look at, and I can show it to you. You go Analysis Expert View Model, and there is the expert model that I have constructed. It's very simple, as you can see. There are trough ranges to catch the 18-month cycle over there, and I have positioned the 40-week cycle over here. But let's not get all sort of caught up in the details. The result of the analysis performed on the basis of this expert model is that, let me get rid of that box. My whiteboard has stopped working. So let me just zoom in, and there we go. That sometimes clears it. Okay, there we go. I've got that working again. So now, as you can see, the 40-week cycle is positioned over there, and the 4th of October trough is in fact only a trough of the 80-day cycle. And here we have the 20-week cycle over here. And here we have a straddled 20-week cycle over here. Remember my discussion about straddled cycles? Earlier in the previous analysis, this was a straddled cycle of the 80-day cycle. This analysis has a straddled cycle of the 20-week cycle. So this is an alternate analysis. Looking at it, we would do the same sort of thing to compare the analysis. I don't want to bore you by going through all the details, but we'll do a few of them just for the sake of comparison. First thing I tend to do is I go into a weekly chart and I look at the shapes of the cycles. So let's quickly do that. Shapes of the cycles here. This is leg 1, which is not as good a shape because notice this this sort of issue that's happening right here, right in the middle of leg 1. Then leg 2, and leg 1 goes all the way up to the highest point, which is there. Oh, no, I beg your pardon. It goes up to the highest point, which is over here. Leg 2 comes down to the intermediate trough. There's the intermediate trough, which is over there. Leg 2 is basically a 2-week leg, which is very short for leg 2. Leg 3 is another 2 weeks. Also, not very satisfactory. And leg 4 then comes down to the final trough of the cycle, which is over there, which is also not a very satisfactory wave shape. I hope you can all see that. That's just really not a. Perhaps I haven't drawn it very well. Let me try and draw it a little bit better. So here's our leg 1. Not very nice. Leg 2, leg 3, both tiny waves. And then leg 4 does that. That's not a nice wave shape. There's simply no other way of saying it. It's just not very nice. And it doesn't fit in with the character of euro to US dollar, as I was speaking about earlier. Here's the second wave shape. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. That's a perfectly good wave shape and looks pretty clear. So it's perfectly valid there. But the wave shape over here is not a very good or clear wave shape. I see a question. Let me see if I can answer that. I use high-resolution digital bandpass filters based on the filters Hurst used in profit measure, which unequivocally identifies the cyclic highs and lows. I have to leave. Very interesting. Can I view the recording? Okay. Can you please how you trade from today? Okay. All right. Several questions there. Yes, there is a recording that is made available. It's uploaded. It's uploaded to YouTube. You can watch the recording. So I will answer your question, and then I hope the answer will be satisfactory when you view it later. William Randall uses high-resolution digital bandpass filters. Sentient Trader uses high-resolution digital bandpass filters to isolate the cycles, which it uses as its initial process. The true value in Hurst's work was not in using bandpass filters or any other form of spectral analysis to isolate the cycles. There are many software packages that can do that. What is really important is that a filter gives you an indication of what cycles are active, and it will identify where those cycle troughs should be positioned. However, as Hurst explained in his cycles course, which was the true genius of his work, were that he proposed a method for analyzing markets on the basis of cycles, which explained that because markets are not perfect, there's a lot of noise in there. There's a lot of fundamental interaction. Fundamentals cause things to move around in a way that's not purely cyclical. If financial markets were a closed system, in other words, they were purely and only cyclical, then you could trade entirely on the basis of digital bandpass filters or any other form of spectral analysis. However, because financial markets are not closed systems, they are subject to a huge amount of fundamental interaction. They're subject to a huge amount of human emotional interaction. Human emotions cause them to go all over the place. As a result, the use of digital bandpass filters are very useful in terms of indicating what cycles are active, and Sentient Trader uses that information. In fact, I can show you the results of some of that information. Where is it? I forget myself where it is. No, it's not there. the analysis panel. There we go. These little charts here are the results of digital bandpass filtering, and they give an indication of what cycle lengths are present in the market. But because financial markets are not a closed system, they're subject to a huge amount of interaction from the outside. Hurst proposed that one needed to take what I call a pattern recognition approach, but it's basically it's an approach that allows the markets to be imperfect. It allows the fact that although the cycles may have turned, the market is accounting for sudden panic that's happening and is causing things to get distorted, and the cycles get distorted, they get pushed around and all that kind of thing. So so there we go. I worked with traditional bandpass filters for a very long time in the very early days of Sentient Trader, and Sentient Trader's analysis is based on the foundation of the information that is produced as a result of that, but it goes a lot further. So that's a really interesting point, a really interesting discussion to have about cycles and how one performs an analysis on the basis of it. Right. Well, here so I presented two alternative analyses. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on and start answering some of the other questions that have come up, so that I can deal with that. I presented two analyses. I hope you found it interesting. I could go into more detail about comparing the analyses and which one is correct and which one isn't correct and all that kind of thing. At the end of the day, the great thing about performing or working according to Hurst's cyclic theory is that often at the end of the day, which analysis turns out to be correct turns out to be, I wouldn't say purely of academic interest, but very often the difference between two different analyses is one purely of degree. And that's the last point I'm going to make about this analysis before I move on to answering some of these questions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the two analyses with roughly the same sort of time frame. Where am I going back to there? About the 10th of July. And so let me go back here to the 10th of July. And so let's compare them. Here's the first analysis I showed you. This trough